Celebrity drama has a strange way of refusing to disappear. Even when people believe a chapter has closed, all it takes is one interview, one sentence, or one careless moment for everything to come rushing back. That's exactly what happened when Blueface once again found himself at the center of online conversation, this time pulling two women from his past back into the spotlight at once. For many fans, the moment felt unsettlingly familiar. The same names resurfaced, the same tension returned, and the same uneasy feeling crept in, that nothing had really changed. Blueface wasn't trending for a new song or a creative breakthrough. He was trending because of what he said, how he said it, and who it affected. At the heart of this renewed attention is Chrisean Rock, a woman whose relationship with Blueface played out publicly for years. Their connection was never quiet or private. It unfolded through live streams, interviews, viral clips, and social media posts that turned deeply personal moments into public debate. Viewers watched arguments happen in real time. Breakups were announced, then undone. Promises were made, questioned, and repeated again. Over time, the relationship stopped feeling like just a romance and started to feel like a cycle, one that millions were watching without knowing how it would end. Supporters defended loyalty and love. Critics raised concerns about emotional well-being and stability. And through it all, the story kept replaying. What made this moment different, however, was that the conversation didn't stop with Chrisean. Another name unexpectedly entered the discussion: Coi Leray, a former girlfriend from a very different period in Blueface's life. A woman whose current public image represents something almost opposite: focus, independence, and forward movement. When Blueface spoke about Coi Leray, the tone shifted. The energy changed. Suddenly, the same voice that sounded critical moments earlier became reflective, even affectionate. That contrast alone was enough to spark intense discussion online. People began asking questions almost immediately. Why speak harshly about one woman while praising another in the same breath? Why reopen old wounds publicly? And why now? Because when someone has a platform as large as Blueface's, words don't exist in isolation. They don't disappear after an interview ends. They circulate, they echo, and they shape how people are seen. Not just by fans, but by the world. This isn't just about relationship drama. It's about patterns. It's about accountability. And it's about whether growth can truly happen when the same cycles keep repeating in public view. As this story unfolds, it becomes clear that this moment isn't just another headline. It's a reflection of unresolved history colliding with present choices. And once that collision happens, there's no easy way to control the outcome. Before we go any further into how this all escalated, why reactions were so intense, and what it could mean moving forward, make sure you're part of the conversation. To understand why this moment hit such a nerve, you have to understand Blueface's relationship with fame itself. From the beginning, his rise was unconventional. His music stood out because it didn't follow the rules, and neither did he. That unpredictability made him interesting, and it also made him polarizing. As his profile grew, so did public access to his life. Blueface didn't just release music, he shared opinions, reactions, and personal moments in real time. Arguments weren't whispered behind closed doors. They were live-streamed. Emotional reactions weren't processed privately. They were posted instantly. Over time, fans stopped separating the artist from the spectacle. The two became intertwined. In modern celebrity culture, oversharing is often rewarded. Clips go viral. Interviews trend. Names stay in rotation. But there's a hidden cost to that kind of visibility. When every emotion is public, there's no room for reflection. When every conflict becomes content, resolution becomes harder. Blueface often presents himself as unapologetically honest. To supporters, that honesty feels refreshing, like someone who refuses to put on a fake, polished image. But honesty without restraint can also feel careless, especially when it involves people he's had deep personal ties with. This is where repetition matters. One controversial comment might be brushed off as a bad moment. But when similar situations happen again and again, audiences stop seeing them as mistakes. They start seeing them as patterns. And patterns shape reputation. By the time Blueface sat down for this latest interview, many viewers weren't listening with curiosity. They were listening with expectations. Not expectations of growth, but expectations of familiarity. They expected tension, they expected provocation, and they expected names from the past to resurface. That's the weight of living publicly for too long. The past never fully stays in the past. Every unresolved issue becomes potential content. Every old relationship becomes a storyline waiting to be revived. There's also another layer that complicates everything: responsibility. When personal relationships involve shared history, shared trauma, or shared children, public commentary carries far more weight. Words don't just reflect feelings, they influence narratives that affect real lives. Blueface's comfort with speaking freely has kept him visible, but it has also locked him into a cycle where visibility comes at the expense of peace. And the longer that cycle continues, the harder it becomes to convince people that things are truly different. By the time his comments began circulating online, many fans weren't shocked by what was said. They were exhausted by what it represented. Another reminder that growth isn't about saying new things, it's about breaking old habits. and that realization set the tone for everything that followed. Chrisean Rock's story cannot be told without acknowledging how much of her life has unfolded under constant observation. From the moment she entered the public eye, she wasn't presented as a carefully managed celebrity. She was raw, emotional, and unfiltered. For many people, that honesty felt real. In a world full of polished images and scripted personalities, Chrisean stood out by showing everything, even the parts most people try to hide. But that level of openness comes with a heavy cost. When emotions are visible, they become vulnerable to judgment. Every reaction is replayed, every mistake is magnified. And when those moments are tied to a high-profile relationship, the scrutiny multiplies. Her relationship with Blueface quickly became the dominant narrative surrounding her. No matter what else she did, it was often filtered through the lens of that connection. Supporters saw deep loyalty and emotional attachment. Critics saw instability and pain. And Chrisean herself seemed caught between wanting love and wanting peace, while the world debated her choices in real time. Over time, the public stopped seeing just a person and started seeing a storyline. Clips were shared without context. Reactions were analyzed frame by frame. And her identity was increasingly reduced to moments of conflict rather than moments of growth. Motherhood changed the conversation in a profound way. Suddenly, the stakes felt higher. Not just for her, but for how people spoke about her. Many fans began hoping this new chapter would bring stability, healing, and distance from past patterns. There was a sense that this could be a turning point, a chance to step out of chaos and into something more grounded. That's why recent remarks about her landed so sharply. To many viewers, it felt like dragging someone back into a version of themselves they were actively trying to leave behind. And when that happens publicly, the impact is deeper. It's not just about feelings, it's about perception, reputation, and the ability to move forward. What often gets overlooked in these situations is how difficult change is when the past is constantly revived. Healing requires space. Growth requires time, and neither comes easily when millions of eyes are watching, waiting for the next mistake. Chrisean's response to renewed attention reflected that reality. Instead of escalating conflict, she focused on self-respect, health, and the role she now carries as a parent. That shift mattered to many people. It signaled an attempt to reclaim control over her narrative, even as others tried to define it for her. Her story highlights a broader truth about fame. Visibility can amplify both pain and progress. And when someone is trying to change, the loudest challenge isn't criticism. It's being constantly reminded of who you used to be. As the conversation around Blueface's comments continued to grow, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about what was said in an interview. It was about how hard it is to move forward when the past keeps being pulled back into the present. By the time Blueface sat down for the interview that would reignite everything, the ground was already fragile. Years of public history, unresolved emotions, and online scrutiny had created a situation where even small remarks could carry enormous weight. And when the conversation turned toward recent events involving Chrisean Rock, that weight became impossible to ignore. As clips from the interview began circulating, viewers immediately focused on tone. It wasn't just what was said, it was how it sounded. Many felt the comments came across as dismissive rather than reflective, especially given the shared history and responsibilities involved. In the court of public opinion, intention matters less than impact. As the interview clips continued to spread, one truth became impossible to avoid. This moment wasn't isolated. It was the collision of unresolved history, public platforms, and choices made without pause for consequence. And once that collision happened, the story could no longer be controlled by one voice alone. The audience had taken over.